100,000 signatures and put it on the ballot. And talk about it is Patrick Ishmael from the Show Me Institute. Good morning, Patrick. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Right to work. It seems like this is pitting labor versus management, corporations versus its workers. How do you see it?
I don't really see it that way. I think that really it comes down to a question of economic competition, because when you look at right to work and right to work states more generally, most of the country is has a state. It is a state that is a right to work state. And in the case of Missouri, every state that surrounds the state of Missouri is a right to work state, with the exception of Illinois. And so it is an issue, I think, that has more to do with the economic consequences of policy and less to do with kind of the nitty-gritty of labor and management relations. I think that one of the concerns here is that Missouri is being left behind. And if you look at, there was a report about a year ago, Ron Richard was quoted as saying that at least 3 car manufacturers, Kia, Nissan, and BMW, had declined to come to Missouri or really seriously considered the state of Missouri because it wasn't a right-to-work state, and those factories that they were considering opened up elsewhere. So I think there are a lot more has to do with the economic consequences of this policy. I don't know that it has a whole lot to do with labor and management relations, but I guess that may depend on a particular situation.
Yeah, but for every auto dealer says he's not building a factory here in town, we've got a Ford factory in Kansas City, we've got a big GM plant in Wentzville. They seem to be doing just fine with the current laws.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think obviously you can have a car company open up in right-to-work states and non-right-to-work states as well. But I don't know that that is necessarily the best example. The fact that you do have some businesses in your state, even though you're not right-to-work, it isn't a bad thing. It's a very good thing to have car companies like that. But if you are also foregoing the opportunity to bring in new car companies, to bring in new jobs, that's kind of an issue. And I think that's one thing that you do see across the country. There's a lot of literature going both ways on the question of wages. But what's really clear is that all these right-to-work states, what you end up seeing after that law passes is increases in employment. You have more jobs that are available for folks. And I think that's something that Missouri needs to really, seriously consider as whether or not that is a policy issue that we need to pursue. Certainly over the course of the last few decades, Missouri's growth, when you're talking about GDP growth, whether you're talking about employment growth, has been pretty lackluster. So I think this is going to be a big issue. I think it'll be a really interesting to see how the vote turns out. But from a policy perspective, I mean, the Show Me Institute has talked about this for a number of years. And right to work is going to be a big economic issue, I think, going forward. Not just in Missouri. I think other states are going to consider it, too. And I think that's why Missouri needs to take a hard look and see where it wants to go in the future.
Let's talk about the wage growth, because right now we have more people looking for jobs we have more jobs than we have people looking for jobs. And yet each economic indicator, every new report comes out, is that wages have stayed relatively stagnant, whether you're in a right-to-work state or not. So with all of this great growth and businesses and everything else, salaries are not going up.
Yeah, I think that there are a lot of different factors that go into that. And like most companies, not every company has right to work as a top 5 issue. So when it comes to wage growth as well, I think that you're looking at a lot of different issues, including things like automation, or the cost of labor being abroad maybe being less expensive depending on what industry you're talking about. So, looking at today's economy and why wages fluctuate the way they do, or they end up stagnating or going up or down, I mean, I think that story is a lot more complicated, and it really has very little to do with right to work directly. I think that what you end up seeing is that not only with right-to-work states you have increases in supplies of labor, but you also see increases in demand for that labor. And again, another example of that is car companies that would have come in if Missouri was right-to-work, that would actually demand labor should the state change its policies in that front. So again, the wage story is a complicated one in general anyway, and I think that's probably the best explanation for why it might be stagnant today.
Yeah. But the argument, though, that the unions are making is that the unions keep the wages up for the union workers as well as the non-union workers in the state of Missouri.
Yeah, I don't know that that's altogether true. I think that it really depends in a lot of respects on how you're using the data. I know that there's a lot of advertisements that have been sent out that have suggested that right-to-work states are poorer as a result of being right-to-work states, and that's not true. And what you actually see, generally speaking, is that a lot of right-to-work states historically have been low-cost states to begin with. Certainly New York and California are high-cost states, the high cost of living states that makes it very difficult if you're poorer to really make ends meet. So the fact that, right-to-work states tend to be less expensive states to begin with, for instance, I think that has been mischaracterized over the course of the last few months. But I think that it's going to be a very interesting debate and discussion going forward. But the fact of the matter is that I think when you look at the research here, like I said, the wage question is kind of ambiguous. But as far as employment is concerned, that's a really huge deal. And I think that you want to make sure that you have demand for your workforce. I think that right to work, as far as the research tends to show, kind of drives that demand, and that's a good thing.
That is Patrick Ishmael with the Show Me Institute. More online at showmeinstitute.org. Patrick, have a good week. Thanks.